Chapter 18, No Complaints. 1 Corinthians 10 and 13. He would not suffer you to be tempted beyond that which you are able to bear, but with the temptation will also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. This was not going to last forever. Therefore, I had to walk in my healing. No matter how hard it got, I would not give up and see myself coming out of this condition. I did not mourn my condition. Instead, I acted as if nothing was happening. This again was my cross to bear. There was no need to burden anyone with it. Complaining about it was not going to solve anything. It was only a matter of time. One way or the other, this too was going to be over. God had already shown me my way of escape by sending me two donors, even before I knew of the first donor. I never gave in to this sickness. When you truly trust the Lord with all your heart, that leaves you room for little doubt. Miracles were going forth, and I was waiting my turn for mine to manifest. At this point, all I can do was now sit and wait on the results from the lab regarding the blood work batch. In the meantime, I continued with my daily life routine. I went to church the following Sunday as usual, feeling a little bit more comfortable about the ministry and becoming familiar with more of the members in the church. There was a family member that I admired that came to church every Sunday. Ironically, we shared the same last name. I love watching this family because they all came to church together. They did not live in the same household, but regularly met on Sunday to fellowship with one another. It was a large family, and they were all members of the church. They were so friendly, and my husband and I took a liking to them. We told them jokingly, since they share the last name as we did, therefore, we were going to get into their family since all of our family was up north. I added, you have such a big family, you would not even notice that we jumped into it. They laughed and welcomed us with open arms. It was nice to be a part of a big loving family. This reminded us of how we fellowshiped after service when we were back home. It brought back so many memories. They invited us over for dinner. We accepted the invitation and spent a wonderful evening with them. We had an immediate connection with one of the sisters. After dinner, she said, I was talking about your health. She seemed to be overly concerned for me. She shared with me about her brother that had a lung transplant and needed another one because the one he had was starting to go bad. She was a strong advocate for donors to save lives. I could understand having had a brother that needed a lung. As we further talked, what came next I did not see coming. I did not share with many people of the gift that my new donor was prepared to give me until we had something concrete. The blood work had not returned, and I did not want to put the cart before the horse. In other words, I needed to wait and see if we were indeed a match. It was a 50-50 chance either way. The next words that came out of her mouth was, I understand you need a kidney. I looked at her with shock in my eyes, thinking, I know she is not going to say what I think she's going to say. Then it came out, I would be willing to be evaluated for you. She said, I have O negative blood type, and my blood is compatible with anyone. I will be a kidney donor for you if you let me. My body and ears went completely numb. This could not be happening again. Who are these people in this church? Where did they come from? What are the chances? My God, another person willing to sacrifice a part of their body to give me an organ was more than a person could imagine. I did not know what to do with myself at that point. I told her about the other donor that got evaluated, and we were waiting to see the results were. Of course, I was out of my mind with gratitude. She then said, well, if it does not work out, I will be here waiting. 3 people in the same church, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, was all that came to my mind. How did I get to be this blessed? When we got home and I told my husband what she said to me, he was in disbelief. We could not wrap our heads around what just happened. There were no words that could express what I was feeling at that moment. I tried over again to understand how this was happening to me. Never have I heard three people offer to give a candidate donating their organs to a perfect stranger they only met less than 3 months. All three attended the same church. This was remarkable. I cried so much until my tears were starting to dry on my face because they couldn't even reach the bottom of my cheeks. My faith in God was on overdrive. The hope of knowing God could do anything but fail, and the love that was shown to me by strangers took my breath away. My entire life was centered around one miracle after another. God was showing himself to me, making it loud and clear that he was in control. The puzzle were connecting one piece at a time. The following week, my husband and I were out shopping for office supplies. My phone rang while I was at the registry paying for my items. When I looked at the number displayed on my phone, my hands began to shake. It was my donor calling me. She had received the results from the blood work. I took a few steps back and asked my husband to pay for the items that were on the counter. He looked at me, wondering who was on the phone because of the sudden move. I nodded to him with one finger in the air to let him know everything was okay. At that moment, I was not sure if everything was okay, but I did not want him to worry. I said, "Hello." My voice was shaking because I knew why she was calling. She said, "I have good news." She kept repeating it over and over. Good news. Then the words came. We are a match. 100% match. I immediately let out a scream that scared my husband as well as the customers in the store. Tears were flowing from my eyes. My husband came running over to me. "What is wrong? What happened? Are you okay?" The people in the store thought something bad had happened, and they began to worry too. At that moment, I did not realize how my reaction must have looked. I could hardly get the words out of my mouth. My donor was still on the phone, and she could hear everything that was going on. I looked at my husband and said, "We are a match, honey." I repeated it at least 10 times over again. Tears were beginning to flow from his eyes. He said, "Are you for real?" I nodded my head and said, "Yes, I am. She is on the phone." I remember him taking the phone to speak with her, and she confirmed it with him. And I then looked at the concerned customers and said, "I am so sorry to alarm you. I am overjoyed with happiness. I am now a recipient of a new kidney." The people in the store began to celebrate with me. It was like God had the right people there at the right moment. Some applauded, cried, and congratulated me at the same time. This was surreal and felt like a dream. It was the day I had been anticipating and dreaming about. It felt like my entire world had just opened and I could finally exhale from holding my breath for so long. 4 years of being attached to a machine are my only means of survival. The very thought that I have an opportunity to a new life, the feeling was indescribable. My donor was a private person, and I had not shared with many people about what she was doing for me. Because of my excitement, I asked her permission if it would be okay if I shared this gift with others. I knew that she was working on her citizenship. I did not want to do anything to cause a problem for her. She said it would be okay because this was something we both should celebrate. God had worked a miracle, and we could not let it go uncelebrated. We did not make it to the parking lot well before I started calling my family and friends to tell them what just happened. There was so much joy and excitement as I began sharing this great miracle with others. When my donor gave me the news about us being a match, the part that stood out the most is when she said, "Not only we're a match, we were also 100% match." Only God can do this. What are the chances of being 100% blood matched? two people who were born on the other side of the world from each other. She was born in Jamaica and I was born in Mississippi. When God needs to put your puzzle together, He would grab the pieces from wherever needed. I knew without a doubt that this was the hand of God. This world might seem large to us, but because God created the heavens and the earth, the world is small to Him. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Later that evening, I received another call that nearly knocked me off my feet. The family that adopted me and my husband to be a part of them, the sister called me and wanted to let me know that she filled out the application and was also approved to be my donor. The administrator for Miami Transplant had informed her that I had a donor match, but if for any reason it did not work, she would be next in line to become my donor. This was so overwhelming that I could not comprehend what just happened. My cup was running over. I was about to burst from all this good news in one day. I needed to take a moment to be alone and have a talk with my God. Matthew 7:7. Ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be open unto you. Lord, all my life you have been there for me. You never left me or forsaken my needs. You have kept every promise. My heart is overwhelmed with all you've done for me. I would dream of this day so many times. Never did I doubt you. You have covered me when no one other than my husband was there to understand what I was going through. I think about the pain you shed on the cross for me. The thought of how you suffered that I might live allowed me to go through this pain a lot easier. I counted it all joy regardless of the situation because I knew you would keep your promises. I declare as long time ago that you would heal my body. What may have seemed so hard to the naked eye, it was nothing for you to do. How you keep me through all of this is simply amazing. Waiting was the hardest thing I had to do. Being patient with me was the hardest job for you to do. Now I utterly understand what it means to have a ram in the bush. I would hear my mother's voice saying those words. There is so much I want to say right now. All I can say is thank you for allowing me this chance. I will keep the promise that was made to you. You will get the glory. Having that a long time talking with the Lord gave me more strength moving forward. The next step was to begin preparations for surgery. There were a lot of procedures that had to be done for me as well as my donor. We both had to endure the same thing. You will be given a complete physical examination to make sure you are healthy enough to donate a kidney, a chest x-ray, an electrocardiogram, which is an EKG. These tests are done to check for random heart or lung diseases. Radiology testing is required. All the testing was done in Miami, Florida, 1 hour and 29 minutes away from where we both lived. My donor did not have transportation, therefore we would have to drive her to 2 appointments. I would have driven her to the moon without any complaints. She was doing me a huge favor, hence the distance did not matter. Having been through so many tests on dialysis, it was nothing for me to go through. My body was used to dealing with the grueling test, but I felt sensitive about what she was going through. The sacrifice that she was making for me was inexpressible. Whenever we had a doctor's appointment, she would have to arrange care for her daughters, sometimes adjusting her work schedule to accommodate the doctor's appointment. There was a time when she had to fast all day before taking a certain kind of test. My heart was hurting because after not eating, she felt ill. I did not want her to go through anything that would cause her any anguish, but it was all a part of the process, and there was nothing that could be done. Everything had to work perfectly to do the surgery. We did not want my body to reject the kidney. Finally, the day came when we got the news that everything was a go. All testing had been done and completed. The only thing that was left to do was set aside a date for surgery. That day, I would never forget. I would never forget. It was etched in my mind, November the 28th, 2017. When the nurse called to confirm the date, everything became a reality. No longer a dream. This was happening, and I owed it all to the Lord. I was in my car by myself when I received the news. I recall letting out a scream that made the windows tremble. I cried with tears of joy. The nurse on the other end of the phone expressed how this was the best part of her job, being able to tell someone they are scheduling them for surgery. She wished me the best and hung up the phone. My first instinct was to call my husband immediately to let him know, but instead I sat there silently, reflecting on how far we had come from the time we came to Florida, realizing every step I made was ordered by the Lord. My husband and I came to the church in April 2017. I met my donor for the first time in July 2017. After 4 years of being on dialysis in November 2017, I would be having surgery to get a kidney. God had truly been good to me. Even though God had already shown me that this was going to happen, I did not know when or how, but I knew God was true to His word. Before meeting my donor, the Lord had awakened me up one night. He spoke to me in a clear voice. He said before this year was out, I would bless you with a new kidney. I always knew my healing was coming, but I did not know when. I shared my thoughts with my family and friends when they came to spend the holidays with us. I told them what the Lord had told me about healing and how it would be manifested before the year was out. Of course, my son jokingly said, "There goes Mom predicting things again." My friends that lived in Chicago were also there to witness making this comment. It was 12:01 a.m., just turning into a new year of 2017. Usually when the Lord speaks to me, I do not say it out loud. I wait to see it manifest and rejoice when it happens. This time I felt compelled to share this with my family. I needed someone to see the power of the Lord and know His works. Who better than my son? I called my son immediately to let him know my surgery was scheduled. He was overjoyed with happiness and said to me, "Mom, you said this was going to happen." I corrected him by saying I said what God showed me was going to happen. We give Him all the glory and praise. My son lived in California. He said, "I will be there for you when you are having your surgery." As promised, he was there when the time came. My eldest son lived here in Florida with me. To have both of their support meant the world to me. When I finally came out of the fog of joy, I called my husband, and he was simply elated and happy. When everything was scheduled, we shared with the church, and you could imagine the joy and excitement the church had for us. My pastor was happy and proud of the members that offered to help me. The church was full with support for both of us. They recognized this was the handwork of God, and as such, the pastor boasted in God with such strong messages in his sermons. It was a celebration for all of us. To witness this great miracle was a once in a lifetime. I know we have read about the healings that have taken place in the Bible from which we have been taught. Jesus performed 7 miracles in the Bible that we read about. The same miracles that were being performed then is the same ones that is being done now, because Christ lives within us right now. He may have lost his life on the cross, but he arose to give us life. Romans 6:9. We know that Christ, being raised from the dead, would never die again. Death no longer has dominion over him. Romans 8:34. Christ Jesus, who died, more than that, who was raised to life, is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. To see this with your own eyes was something to behold. This was a miracle straight from heaven, and no one could say differently. The evening before the surgery, there was a still calmness that came over me. It was as if the weight of the world that stood on my shoulders for so long were finally disappearing. God was preparing me for what was to come. I called my donor to check on her to make sure she was all right. It had already been explained to both of us how the process was going to take place and how much recovery time we both would have to endure. I knew that it would be more intense for me to be the recipient. The very thought of her experiencing any pain bothered me the most. The reality of what she was doing for me struck me. For someone to agree to put themselves through the life-saving, changing procedure for a person they just met was a selfless act. The sacrifice she was making that I could live was amazing for words to describe. I heard many stories about the act of kindness that people do for others. When you are the one experiencing this act, it becomes more real. Every moment of this experience was dictated in my head. I finally asked the question, Lord, why me? I never wanted it to be any questions about my faith, hope, or love that I knew God had for me and I for him. I received my answer the moment the thought came to my head, why not you? You have been faithful to me, and I keep my promises. I will never leave you or forsake you. I have been with you every step of the way as your father. My job is to protect you. I knew before you were born what your life's journey was going to be. The trials and tribulations you may have experienced were only a test of your faith. Even though there were times you may have wondered if I was listening, I heard every word, thought, and concern you may have had. I know how this ends even before you knew there was a beginning. I want you to take this gift that you're being given. Share it to everyone that may listen. Let them know I am the same God that blesses you. I will be the same God that will bless them. I'm impartial towards everybody. I have loved all my children the same. If you trust me, I will take care of you. I just want to be recognized that I am the true and living God. It was simple how I received my answer from the Lord. Some people may think questioning God is wrong, but I believe to get the answer that you need, you have to ask the question. The important thing is to have an ear to listen to what he is saying to you. My question did not mean I did not trust him. I was so honored and privileged that he chose me. My only question now was, how do I repay him? The day finally came, and we had to be at the hospital at 6 a.m. I did not get much sleep the night before. Our surgery was scheduled to be the first surgery for that day. This was an exciting moment for all of us. My son had flown in from California to be with me. My first donor is a member of the church as well. She offered to be with us during the surgery. How impressive was it to have her with us? God used her to put the wheels in motion. It was a privilege to have her there. She scheduled time off work and met us at the hospital. My dear friends from Chicago came back to be with us as well. They were the reasons we came to the church, because of their invitation. The most important person of all was my donor. We picked her up and drove to the hospital together. Everyone was in their respective places. God met us at the hospital. He had already sent his angels ahead to make sure everything was set. We were headed to Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami, Florida. As we drove, it was a happy but quiet ride. We were all in a state of disbelief that this was happening. At least my mind was wondering after being on this machine for so long. The thought that I was going to be given a chance to have what I used to call a normal life was about to happen. I wanted to stick my head out the window and yell to the top of my voice, "Thank you, Lord," repetitively. The closer we got to the hospital, the mood shifted to reality. When we got out of the car and went to the registration desk, things got real. I had always tried to show this sense of strength, but nervousness crept upon me. I was sure that was normal before surgery. I looked at the expression on my husband's face. It was as if he could not believe we were at this point. We had been through so much together. I just wanted to absorb this every move. This was an important chapter in my life. Every little thing became so important. Even the pictures on the walls in the hospital became prevalent. That may sound a little strange, but I just wanted to remember this day. The nurse called our names to take us up to be prepared for surgery. They called my donor first. I remember going over to her and telling her that I would never forget this moment. My first donor was already at the hospital waiting. I asked her would she accompany her. Of course, she was delighted to do so. I went over to my donor, but did not know what to say because thank you just did not seem enough at that moment. All I can do is hug her tightly in my arms and tell her how much I loved her. The nurse practically had to tear my arms from her, around her. I watched her get on the elevator. There was a big lump that dropped in my stomach. My husband came over and hugged me tightly with tears in his eyes. He whispered in my ear, "This is the day, honey, we have been waiting for so long. Everything is going to be all right. It is all in God's hands now." Moments later, the nurse then came to get me. My nerves were in overdrive by now. I was then taken to prepare for surgery as well. All I could think about was my donor. I asked the nurse, was I going to see her again before we go to surgery? She said after we get prepped, they would make sure we see each other. I was so delighted to hear that. After about an hour of preparations, they put us both in the same room together. There was a curtain that separated us. I could hear her voice between the curtains. My first donor was comforting her, and my family and friends were back and forth in her room as well as mine. I asked them to spend more time with her and my husband with me. I wanted her to know she was not alone and we were one family together. There were a lot of doctors and nurses attending to the both of us. They told me that she would be taken first. Shortly afterwards, they would come and get me. There were only moments left for surgery. The nurse opened the curtain that we could spend a few moments together. When they pulled the curtain back and I saw her laying on the bed, tears began to flow. This was happening. Now, and every emotion you could imagine came over me. They pulled our beds close together that we could touch each other. With IVs in our arms, we could not fully hug one another. I got close enough to her to whisper in her ear, I would never forget this moment. The doctors and nurses were all excited. My family and friends were over the moon with happiness. There were videos taken as well as pictures. This was a moment that we all captured. The medicine that was given relaxed me, and it was the beginning to kick in. The time had come for them to take her to surgery. I watched so intently as they took her to the operating room. The wait was unbearable. Before they could take me, the kidney had to be viable. It was not even quite a half an hour they got me. This was it. They came back quickly and grabbed me. Everything looked good, the doctor said. Those were the words we wanted to hear. They immediately rushed me into the operating room and started the surgery. As they were taking me into the operating room once again, my eyes focused on everything I passed from the lights in the ceiling to the towel on the floor. For some reason, I felt the need to memorize every moment. When I was settling into the operating room, I could hear the doctors and nurses converse with one another. Slowly, I began to drift into a deep sleep. The last thing I remember was saying, Lord, doctor's hands. I remember being awakened by voices. The nurse was calling my name, asking could I hear them. I knew at that point the surgery was over. Like most surgeries, when you're coming out of the anesthesia, you're feeling a bit groggy. At the same time, you are aware of your surroundings. I asked the nurse, how did I do? She said, I did great. Everything was fine, and the doctor would be in to speak with me. All I could think about at that moment was, how was my donor doing? The doctor soon came and told me everything went as expected. My donor was doing great. I began to give God praise and glory for bringing both of us through this operation. The doctor continued by saying the kidney fit me like a glove, as if I was born with it. Those words were ringing in my ear. There is only one person can make a perfect fit. It took a perfect God. This would be the beginning of a celebration of life that had no end. Word got around quickly about what the Lord had done. Ironically, my donor and I were on the same floor, recovering in our rooms. Being the recipient, I knew my recovery was going to take a little longer. My donor was up and about the very next day. I was so happy that she did not have much downtime. The sacrifice she already made was for me enough. I wanted to see her heal quickly. We did not get a chance to see one another until a day later. My sons came to visit me. They also went to check on her to make sure she was doing well. I looked up, and there she was standing at the door with my sons. Seeing her standing there brought so much joy to my heart. She wanted to come and check on me to make sure I was doing okay. This young lady was simply unbelievable. Who would risk their life for a stranger? God sent me an angel. The three of them that sat down in my room, I remember my son asking her, "Why? What made you do this?" She replied, "Why not? Your mother had a need, and I had the kidney. I had to be obedient to God." Her answer was so remarkable. All I can do is cry.